It was a quiet evening in a small town, and a black military medic was finally returning home after a long deployment, eager to reunite with his family. But when three bikers decided to make him their target at a gas station, they had no idea they'd be facing a true hero. This is a story of courage, unexpected strength, and the power of resilience against prejudice. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. We have a new special story for you tomorrow. As the sun dipped below the mountains of northern Arizona, military medic Logan Harris guided his old, reliable gray Jeep Wrangler into a gas station on the edge of Winslow. The place was solitary, its neon open sign buzzing against the growing dusk, casting a faint red glow across the parking lot. After a 12-month deployment in Iraq, this small-town station felt both familiar and surreal, a scene worlds apart from the life Logan had known overseas. He pulled up to pump number 5, the gravel crunching under his tires as he parked. Logan's military uniform was still intact from the flight, crisp, clean, and a reminder of the world he was leaving behind for a while. He hadn't even taken the time to change. His mind was singularly focused on the journey home, on surprising his wife, Claire, and their 7-year-old son, Noah. They weren't expecting him for another week, but he'd managed to catch an earlier transport, hoping to catch them off guard. The evening air was cool, and the faint smell of pine drifted from the hills nearby, blending with diesel and the soft chirping of crickets. Logan stepped out of his Jeep, his boots hitting the ground with a familiar thud. He took a deep breath, stretching his tall frame as he worked out the stiffness from the long drive from the airbase. At 34, he was a man whose face still held traces of youth, though his eyes told a different story, eyes that had seen things no one else could truly understand. Inside his chest pocket, Logan kept a worn-out drawing that Noah had sent him 6 months ago, carefully folded and protected. It was a stick figure portrait of their family, 3 figures with oversized smiles standing in front of their home, complete with a huge orange sun and a blue sky dotted with small birds. Above the figures, Noah had written in wobbly handwriting, "Come home soon, Dad." Logan smiled as he looked at the drawing, feeling his son's innocent message tug at his heart. "Soon," he whispered, grateful to be making good on that promise. The gas station was quiet except for one car, a dusty red sedan, parked near the convenience store entrance. Through the windows, Logan could see an older man behind the counter, lost in a newspaper, looking as if he'd seen 1,000 evenings just like this one. This peaceful solitude felt oddly disconnected from Logan's world. The serene scene held a fragility, as though any disturbance might shatter it like glass. As Logan inserted his credit card into the pump, he felt a sense of alertness, a habit perhaps, but one he couldn't easily shake. His eyes instinctively scanned the station, noting the security cameras, the shadows between the pump islands, and the clear sight lines back to the road. These were things he was trained to observe, and though he was far from the dangers he knew, he couldn't fully let go. Just as he was about to cap off his tank, a distant rumble disrupted the peace. The sound of roaring engines echoed off the mountains, growing louder by the second. Logan's instincts kicked in, his heightened awareness making him keenly alert. Soon, 3 motorcycles emerged from the shadows, their headlights casting sharp beams onto the pavement as they approached. The bikes pulled in slowly, parking in a staggered row on the other side of the pump island, engines idling with a menacing growl. The riders were dressed in black leather, their jackets emblazoned with patches and symbols that Logan vaguely recognized from his years stationed in different places. They were tough-looking men, each with an air of arrogance. The leader, a towering man with a scruffy gray beard, wore a leather vest bearing a patch that read, "Iron Reapers, AZ." His 2 companions looked just as formidable, one with a bald head and dark sunglasses and the other with a bandana covering half of his face. Logan remained calm, his face revealing nothing as he continued filling up. But internally, he was already assessing the situation, taking note of the bikers' movements and any possible exits. He'd been trained to handle hostile scenarios, and though he hoped he'd left that world behind, The warning bells in his mind were impossible to ignore. The leader of the bikers glanced at Logan's uniform with a sneer, nudging his friend and nodding in Logan's direction. "Look what we got here," he called out, his voice loud enough to cut through the stillness. "One of Uncle Sam's boys gracing us with his presence." Logan gave a slight nod, choosing to remain silent. He'd learned that sometimes the best approach with aggressors was to offer no reaction at all, denying them the response they sought. The bald biker adjusted his sunglasses, smirking as he walked closer to Logan. "We don't take too kindly to military types around here," he taunted. "Think you're some kind of hero, huh?" Logan kept his gaze forward, staying calm. His body remained alert, every muscle ready to act if needed. He continued with his task, giving no attention to their provocations, hoping they'd lose interest. But the bikers had other ideas. The leader stepped closer, his massive frame blocking the faint light from the gas station sign. He was close enough that Logan could smell the mix of tobacco and cheap whiskey on his breath. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" he growled, his tone low and threatening. "Coming back here like some kind of hero expecting everyone to bow down and thank you." Logan met the man's gaze briefly, keeping his voice steady. "I'm just here to fill up my tank," he said, his tone neutral yet firm. The leader smirked. "Maybe we don't like your kind around here. Maybe you ought to get back on that highway and keep going." Logan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "I'm not looking for any trouble." The biker laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the empty station. "Trouble? You think we're trouble?" He looked back at his companions, who chuckled darkly in response. "We're just getting started." Without warning, the leader reached out and grabbed the American flag patch on Logan's shoulder, tugging it roughly. Logan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of resolve, a look that the biker failed to notice but would soon regret. The air inside the gas station store was cool, the buzzing fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over the neatly stocked shelves. Logan's boots made a soft thud as he stepped through the door, taking in the familiar scent of stale coffee and cleaning supplies. Behind the counter, the elderly clerk, whose name tag read Stan, glanced up with a concerned expression, sensing the tension. The bikers, however, were already inside, prowling through the aisles and knocking items off the shelves with what seemed like careless indifference. One of the bikers, the one with a bandana, was fiddling with the cooler doors, yanking them open with unnecessary force. Another, bald and bulky, positioned himself by the coffee machine, casually blocking access with his large frame. Logan moved calmly to the water section, remaining composed but acutely aware of each man's movements around him. The leader, whom Logan had mentally labeled Graybeard, watched him closely, his eyes calculating and predatory. "Hey, soldier boy." Graybeard's voice boomed across the small store, echoing off the walls. "You think you're some kind of hero?" He grabbed a bag of chips from the shelf, crushed it in his hand, and tossed it carelessly onto the floor. Logan didn't flinch. He picked out a water bottle, his movements smooth and controlled, refusing to rise to the bait. He had encountered men like these before, men who sought intimidation as a means of control, who thrived on fear. But Logan had faced more danger than these bikers could imagine, and he wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of fear. The bandana-wearing biker slammed a cooler door shut, smirking as he sauntered up to Logan. "What's the matter, soldier boy?" he taunted. "Too good to answer a simple question?" The clerk Stan watched with growing apprehension, his gaze shifting between Logan and the bikers. He'd seen enough trouble in his years working behind the counter to recognize when things were about to escalate. His hand moved instinctively toward the phone, ready to call for help if needed. As a retired Vietnam veteran himself, Stan sensed something familiar in Logan's posture. A calm, focused composure that only came from years of facing real danger. Logan approached the coffee station, where the bald biker stood blocking his way. "Excuse me," Logan said quietly, his voice steady and polite. The biker didn't move. Instead, he gave a mocking laugh, cupping his ear. "What was that? Did the soldier say something?" He feigned clumsiness, spilling a cup of coffee onto the floor with an exaggerated shrug. "Oops. Guess we need the military to come clean up our mess." Graybeard ambled over, his heavy boots scuffing the freshly mopped floor, leaving dirty tracks behind. He stood close to Logan, close enough that Logan could see the glint in his eye, the satisfaction he found in attempting to provoke. "You know, I don't think you military types are so special," he sneered, towering over Logan. "Walking around like you own the place, expecting everyone to thank you." Logan remained silent, his gaze forward, his muscles tense but controlled. Years of training in close combat had taught him to read an opponent's body language, to predict their moves, and to act only when necessary. He could see the biker's eyes gleaming with the thrill of intimidation, unaware that they were walking into a battle they were far from prepared for. The biker with the bandana circled around behind Logan, creating a triangle of intimidation. "Maybe we should teach him a little respect," he muttered, cracking his knuckles for dramatic effect. Stan watched the tension in the room building, his fingers hovering over the phone keypad. He knew that this was reaching a breaking point, that things were about to escalate, and he couldn't help but feel a pang of concern for Logan. But something in Logan's demeanor, the calm, almost detached way he was handling the situation, made Stan pause. This was a man who'd been through worse, who had an inner strength these bikers couldn't begin to comprehend. Then, Graybeard made his fatal mistake. He reached out, grabbing the American flag patch on Logan's uniform shoulder, tugging it with a sneer. "What's this worth to you, soldier boy?" he mocked. "You think this little patch makes you better than us?" Logan's gaze shifted from the coffee machine to Graybeard's face, a quiet intensity simmering beneath his calm exterior. In that moment, something in his expression changed, a shift that only Stan, with his years of experience, recognized. It was the look of a man who had faced unimaginable hardships, a man who knew precisely how to handle danger. Graybeard sneered, oblivious to the shift in Logan's stance. "You know what else I hate about you military types?" he continued, giving the patch another tug. "You come back here thinking you're some kind of heroes. But what's so heroic about dropping bombs from the sky?" Logan remained still, his mind flashing back to memories of friends he had lost overseas, brothers who had given their lives to protect the innocent, to save lives, to keep their country safe. He thought about a friend who had taken a bullet while shielding a civilian family, about another who had made the ultimate sacrifice for his comrades. And here, in this small-town gas station, these bikers were mocking that sacrifice. The bandana-wearing biker took advantage of Logan's silence, poking him in the back with a smirk. "Not so tough without your whole army behind you, huh?" he taunted, laughing alongside his friends. Stan's fingers hovered above the phone keypad, ready to call for help. But he sensed the change in Logan's posture, a subtle shift that signaled the beginning of something the bikers hadn't anticipated. Logan slowly turned, his calm gaze locking onto Graybeard's. "I've met men like you before," he said quietly, his voice clear and steady, carrying through the store. "Men who mistake kindness for weakness." Graybeard's confident sneer faltered for the first time. He loosened his grip on the flag patch, his bravado slipping as he noticed the combat badges on Logan's chest, the Special Forces insignia, the combat ribbons. Realization dawned slowly, but it was too late. The bald biker tried to interject, though his voice wavered slightly. "Better watch your mouth, soldier boy," he warned, though his confidence had begun to fade. He could sense the change in the air, like the calm before a storm. Logan reached up, removing Graybeard's hand from his uniform with firm, controlled strength. "I'll give you one chance," he said, his voice even and unshaken. "Walk away now. Get on your bikes and leave." The bikers exchanged uncertain glances, but Graybeard, stung by wounded pride, made a fateful decision. "Get him," he growled, gesturing to his companions. His hand curled into a fist as he swung at Logan, determined to prove his dominance. But Logan was faster. his years of training taking over as he sidestepped the punch, slipping inside Graybeard's reach with a fluidity that took everyone by surprise. Before Graybeard could react, Logan had him in a precise arm lock, shifting his balance and sending him stumbling forward, his own weight working against him. The other two bikers hesitated, caught off guard by Logan's skill and speed, but they lunged at him anyway, hoping their numbers would overwhelm him. Logan moved swiftly, sidestepping Bandana's wild punch and redirecting his momentum, sending him crashing into a shelf of chips. He blocked the bald biker's attempt to grab him, using the man's forward motion to throw him off balance, each move executed with the precision of someone who'd spent years mastering hand-to-hand combat. Stan watched in awe from behind the counter, witnessing a scene that reminded him of his own days in Vietnam. But what Logan was doing was beyond anything Stan had seen, a display of control and efficiency that was nothing short of remarkable. Logan wasn't fighting with anger or aggression. He was neutralizing each threat with calculated movements like a master strategist controlling a chessboard. Graybeard scrambled to his feet, his face red with rage and humiliation. He charged again, but Logan met him with another swift maneuver, stepping aside and using Graybeard's momentum to bring him down. In seconds, the massive man was on the ground, gasping for breath, stunned by the swiftness of his fall. The entire encounter had lasted less than a minute. 3 bikers lay dazed on the floor while Logan stood calmly in the center of the store, his uniform still pristine, his expression unchanged. He hadn't thrown a single punch, relying instead on his training and discipline to defuse the situation. Stan finally reached for the phone, his voice steady as he dialed. "Police are on their way," he announced, glancing at the bikers with a mixture of relief and admiration. Logan straightened, adjusting his uniform as he looked down at the men who had tried to intimidate him. "Next time," he said quietly, "think twice before you disrespect someone who served." As red and blue lights flashed through the store's windows, Logan turned back to the coffee machine, finally pouring himself that long-awaited cup. He added cream and sugar as if nothing had happened, while Stan watched in silent admiration, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the small gas station, creating an almost surreal atmosphere as 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot, their tires crunching over gravel. The 3 bikers were still sprawled on the floor, groaning as they struggled to regain their composure. Logan remained by the coffee machine, stirring his cup, his demeanor calm and collected, as though nothing out of the ordinary had taken place. Officer Natalie Reyes, a seasoned cop with over 20 years on the force, stepped through the store entrance, her eyes scanning the scene with a practiced sharpness. Her partner, Officer Williams, was right behind her, taking in the situation with wide eyes. They saw 3 large bikers lying dazed and disheveled on the floor, surrounded by scattered bags of chips and knocked-over displays. In stark contrast, a black man in military uniform stood at ease by the counter sipping his coffee, calm and composed. "Evening, sir," Officer Reyes greeted, her gaze settling on Logan. "Got a call about some trouble here." Logan nodded politely, his military bearing evident in his posture. "Evening, officer. Sorry for the disturbance." One of the bikers, the leader they called Graybeard, was attempting to sit up, his pride bruised even more than his body. He looked to Officer Reyes with a scowl. "We want to press charges," he spat out, though his voice lacked its earlier arrogance. Officer Williams crouched beside the bikers, checking them for injuries. "Sir, from what I'm seeing here, it looks like you're the ones who caused the trouble," he said, gesturing at the fallen chip displays and scattered coffee cups. He glanced over at Stan, the clerk, who was holding his phone with a relieved smile. Stan shuffled over to Officer Reyes, his expression eager as he held up his phone. "Got the whole thing right here on security footage," he announced, clearly proud of his quick thinking. "These guys started it, officer. The soldier over there, he gave them every chance to walk away." Reyes watched the footage with raised eyebrows, her admiration for Logan growing as she saw the calculated, controlled way he'd handled the confrontation. "Special forces? she asked, noting the combat insignias on Logan's uniform. Logan gave a modest nod. Yes, ma'am. Medic just returned from Iraq. Graybeard, his anger bubbling over, tried to speak up. This guy attacked us. Just jumped us out of nowhere. Officer Williams raised his hand, silencing him. Sir, the footage clearly shows you made the first move. He held up a small knife he had found near the bald biker. And bringing a weapon into it changes the whole game. This is serious. The biker with the bandana, whose real name turned out to be Danny, paled. He had a record, and violating his parole by carrying a weapon in an altercation would mean severe consequences. He opened his mouth to protest, but the words seemed to catch in his throat, his bravado evaporating under the weight of the situation. Here's how this is going to go, Officer Reyes announced, her voice steady with authority. We're taking statements from everyone involved, but from what I've seen on the footage and the witness accounts, this was clearly self-defense. As for you three, she turned to the bikers with a hard stare. You're coming down to the station. The bikers exchanged looks, their confidence crumbling in the face of real consequences. Graybeard, whose real name was Jerry Tucker, looked down, defeated. This ain't over, he muttered under his breath, though the threat lacked its earlier strength. As the officers began reading the bikers their rights, Stan walked over to Logan, handing him a fresh cup of coffee with a smile. This one's on the house, son, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Reminds me of something that happened outside Da Nang back in '71. His eyes misted as he reminisced, feeling a camaraderie with Logan that spanned generations. Logan listened respectfully, nodding as Stan recounted his own experiences as a young soldier returning home. The veteran clerk's voice held a mixture of pride and sorrow, and Logan felt a sense of connection to the older man, a silent understanding of what it meant to serve. Outside, more patrol cars had arrived, and the officers were running the bikers' IDs through their system. As it turned out, both Graybeard and Danny had outstanding warrants, and the bald biker had a history of parole violations. What had started as a simple act of bullying was quickly turning into a night of consequences these men hadn't anticipated. Officer Reyes approached Logan one last time, a hint of admiration in her gaze. You handled that situation perfectly, Sergeant, she said, her voice sincere. Minimal force, no serious injuries, clear self-defense. You're free to go. And welcome home. Logan thanked her, gathering his coffee and water as he prepared to leave. He gave Stan a nod of appreciation, pausing just long enough to acknowledge the man's silent support. As Logan walked past the bikers, now handcuffed and awaiting transport, Graybeard avoided his gaze, a flicker of shame passing over his face. The gas station returned to its usual quiet as the police cars pulled away, the flashing lights fading into the distance. Stan watched from behind the counter, a sense of pride filling him as he watched Logan head for the door. Hey, Sergeant, he called out just before Logan stepped outside. Next time you're in town, coffee's on me. Logan gave him a nod and a slight smile, touched by the gesture. Thank you, Stan, he replied. I'll take you up on that. Meanwhile, back at the police station, the three bikers were escorted into separate interview rooms. The bright fluorescent lights cast a harsh glare as they were processed, each man suddenly looking much less intimidating without their leather jackets and bravado. Detective Jared Collins, a 20-year veteran of the force, reviewed their records on his computer screen, shaking his head in disbelief as he noted the outstanding warrants and parole violations. So let me get this straight, Detective Collins began, his tone laced with a mix of disbelief and amusement. He looked at Graybeard, now Jerry Tucker, whose bravado had long since disappeared. You thought it was a good idea to pick a fight with a Special Forces medic, huh? Graybeard slumped in his chair, his massive shoulders drooping as he stared at his hands. The leather vest he had been so proud of now sat in an evidence bag, leaving him looking ordinary, vulnerable. Didn't know he was Special Forces, he muttered, his voice lacking its usual confidence. In the next room, Danny was facing a stern parole officer, Mrs. Lewis. She crossed her arms, her expression a mix of disappointment and frustration. "A knife?" she repeated, shaking her head. "You brought a knife to a gas station altercation? Do you have any idea what this means for your parole?" Meanwhile, at Stan's gas station, the evening had returned to its usual quiet rhythm. Stan was busy restocking the shelves, but every now and then he'd glance at the security footage on his phone, replaying the scene with a growing sense of pride. When a customer entered, Stan eagerly shared the story, describing Logan's calm, precise actions with a mixture of awe and admiration. "See that move right there?" he'd say, pointing at the screen. "That's what real training looks like. Pure skill, not a single punch thrown unless necessary. Reminds me of what we learned back in Vietnam, though he's a whole lot smoother." Customers gathered around, nodding with respect as they watched the footage, marveling at how Logan had taken down 3 men without even breaking a sweat. Back at the police station, the bikers sat in their holding cells, each lost in thought, contemplating the night's events. Graybeard stared at his hands that had intimidated so many people before, but had proven useless against real combat training. The tough guy image he had built over years had crumbled in seconds, leaving him to confront the emptiness of his bravado. As the officers wrapped up their reports, Officer Reyes pinned the bikers' mugshots to a bulletin board, a reminder of the night a humble soldier had taught 3 bullies a lesson in respect. Next to the mugshots, she placed a still frame from the gas station footage, capturing Logan's calm stance as he diffused the situation. It was an image that spoke of strength, resilience, and the quiet power of those who truly serve. As Logan drove home that evening, the events at the gas station began to fade into the background, replaced by thoughts of his family. The lights of his neighborhood came into view, casting a warm glow across the quiet streets. Logan could feel his heartbeat quicken as he approached his house. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was just past 10:15 p.m., later than he'd planned, but he hoped Claire and Noah were still awake. When he pulled into the driveway, Logan noticed the porch light was on, and through the window, he saw Claire curled up on the couch with a book. She seemed lost in thought, unaware of his arrival. He quietly shut off the engine and stepped out of the Jeep, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. He was finally home. As he walked up the pathway, the front door suddenly flew open, and Noah, who had clearly been waiting, dashed out in his pajamas, his eyes lighting up the moment he saw his father. "Daddy!" he shouted, launching himself into Logan's arms. Logan laughed, catching Noah and holding him close, the stress and tension of the day melting away in an instant. Claire appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face as she took in the sight of Logan holding their son. She hurried down the steps, her arms wrapping around both of them as she joined the embrace. For a moment, the world outside disappeared, leaving only the warmth of family and the quiet joy of reunion. Inside, Noah proudly touched the flag patch on Logan's uniform, the same one that had been the target of disrespect earlier. "Daddy, you're my hero," he said softly, his small fingers tracing the embroidered stars and stripes. Logan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, buddy," he replied, ruffling Noah's hair. He thought back to the gas station, to the bikers who had tried to tear him down, and felt a quiet sense of victory in Noah's innocent words. His family's love and pride were all he needed. The next morning, as the sun rose over Winslow, news of the gas station incident had begun spreading through the community. Word traveled quickly in the small town, especially when it involved acts of courage and integrity. At the local VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars post, veterans gathered over coffee, sharing the story with a mixture of pride and admiration. "He was a black guy, wasn't he?" one of the older veterans asked, a sense of respect in his voice. "Facing 3 men without throwing a single punch, that takes a level of control you don't see every day." The other veterans nodded in agreement, acknowledging Logan's quiet strength. For them, it wasn't just a story of self-defense. It was a testament to the character of a man who had served with honor, a man who had faced prejudice and hostility with grace and discipline. At the local diner, Stan, the gas station clerk, was the talk of the town. He proudly showed the gas station's security footage to anyone who would listen, recounting the scene with a newfound energy. "It wasn't about fighting," he'd say, his voice filled with admiration. "He just handled it. Those men didn't stand a chance, and not because he was stronger, but because he was smarter. He didn't even need to raise a fist." Stan's retelling of the story quickly became a staple at the diner. Locals would gather around his booth, listening to every detail with rapt attention. And with each telling, Stan's pride in Logan seemed to grow, his admiration for the young soldier rekindling memories of his own days of service. The impact of the story extended far beyond the diner, reaching even the local news station. By evening, the story had aired on the local news, highlighting Logan's discipline and the message of respect he'd embodied. For the townspeople, Logan's actions were a reminder of the strength and resilience that true heroes possess. Heroes who didn't seek to fight but knew how to stand up with dignity when it mattered most. Meanwhile, at the police station, the three bikers were facing the reality of their actions. Each of them sat in separate holding cells, their expressions a mix of frustration and regret. The walls of bravado and confidence they had built around themselves had crumbled, replaced by the cold, hard truth of the consequences they now faced. Graybeard, whose tough demeanor had made him a leader in the biker gang, found himself grappling with shame. He remembered the moment he'd grabbed Logan's flag patch, thinking it would be an easy way to assert dominance. Now, sitting alone in a holding cell, he could feel the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him. In another cell, Danny, the bandana-wearing biker, stared blankly at the floor. He knew the parole violation would cost him, and he'd likely be facing a return to prison. He had made a mistake, a series of them, in fact, and now he had to confront the consequences. The third biker, Tommy, sat silently, his mind replaying the events of the previous night. He realized how foolish they had been, how they had grossly underestimated the strength of the man they'd tried to intimidate. It dawned on him that Logan hadn't shown any fear, not because he was arrogant, but because he was genuinely strong. Back in town, Logan's story continued to spread, reaching those who hadn't yet heard of the incident. At the community center where veterans met for their weekly gatherings, Logan's actions were held up as an example of resilience and respect. Veterans from various eras, from Vietnam to Desert Storm to Afghanistan, shared their stories and discussed how military training had shaped their lives long after service. They spoke of the ways it taught them not only to fight, but to rise above, to maintain a sense of dignity, even when faced with prejudice or disrespect. Officer Reyes, the officer who had responded to the gas station call, stopped by the community center that morning. She had added the gas station security footage to the police academy's training materials, using it as a powerful demonstration of restraint and control in the face of adversity. She shared the story with the veterans, who listened with nods of understanding, recognizing Logan's discipline as something they too had known in their time. The impact of Logan's actions continued to ripple through the town. Even the Iron Reapers, the biker gang that the three men belonged to, held an emergency meeting. The members were outraged by the disrespect shown to a veteran and a soldier, and by an unanimous vote, they expelled Graybeard, Danny, and Tommy from their ranks. The club president made it clear, disrespecting veterans was a line they could not cross, and the three bikers had shamed their organization. A week later, Stan hosted his regular veterans breakfast at the gas station. The small store was packed with former service members from different branches and eras, all eager to shake Logan's hand and hear his story firsthand. They shared laughs, traded stories, and talked about the lessons they had learned from their years of service. Many of them had faced challenges of their own upon returning to civilian life, but they all understood the power of discipline and the quiet strength that Logan had displayed. Officer Reyes stopped by during her patrol, nodding respectfully at Logan as she had to write him a cup of coffee. "Your stories made an impact on this town, Sergeant," she said with a smile. "You've shown people what real strength looks like." Logan accepted the coffee with a nod of gratitude, humbled by the support he felt around him. He hadn't set out to make a statement. He had simply acted on his principles. But the response from his community had been overwhelming. reminding him of the deep bonds of respect that connected those who served, regardless of when or where. As for the three bikers, their court date approached, and each of them faced the reality of their sentences. For Graybeard, the longest sentence awaited him, a stark reminder of the path he had chosen and the consequences of disrespecting those who stood for something greater. In a moment of uncharacteristic reflection, he wrote a letter of apology to be delivered to the local VFW, expressing remorse for his actions and acknowledging the respect he should have shown. The story of what happened at Stan's gas station became something of a local legend, shared at barbershops, diners, and veterans' meetings, but it wasn't remembered as a tale of violence or revenge. Rather, it was a story of integrity, of a man who had stood his ground with strength and grace. Logan's actions served as a reminder that true heroes didn't seek out fights, but they certainly knew how to end them, and more importantly, how to do so with dignity. As the days passed, the story of Logan's encounter at the gas station took on a life of its own. In Winslow, people shared the tale over coffee at the diner, and it became a point of pride for the community. Many residents felt that Logan had not only stood up for himself but had represented the town's values, integrity, respect, and strength in the face of adversity. At home, Logan settled back into the rhythms of family life. Each morning he helped Noah get ready for school, spending moments at the breakfast table that he had longed for during his deployment. For Logan, the simple things felt like luxuries now. The warmth of the kitchen, Claire's laughter, Noah's endless chatter about his school projects. Being back reminded him of why he had served and the sacrifices he'd made. But it wasn't long before the story of the gas station incident made its way beyond Winslow. One morning, as Logan poured himself a cup of coffee, he received a call from his commanding officer at Fort Huachuca, where he'd been stationed before his last deployment. "Logan, you've got people talking all over," his CO remarked with a chuckle. "The story's reached the base and it's spreading fast. Word is your actions that night are inspiring a lot of folks." Logan felt a wave of humility wash over him. "I just did what felt right, sir," he replied. "Well, that's what makes it even better. You've shown what it means to be disciplined and composed under pressure. The base wants to recognize that." His CO paused before adding, "There's talk of using your story in some of our new training materials, showing that courage isn't just about fighting, but knowing when to stand your ground with grace." Logan thanked his CO, feeling both honored and a bit surprised. He hadn't set out to make a statement or to inspire others. He had simply acted on the principles ingrained in him by years of military service. Yet hearing that his actions had resonated with people across different backgrounds made him realize the power of a single moment, a single decision. A few days later, Logan was invited to speak at a nearby veterans event. It was held in the community center of a neighboring town where veterans from all walks of life had gathered. Logan stood in front of the crowd, sharing his story in a quiet, modest tone. He spoke of the importance of self-discipline, of respecting oneself and others, and of the inner strength that true training instilled. The room fell silent as he recounted the events, the audience hanging on to every word, moved by the way he had held his ground with courage and dignity. After his talk, several veterans approached him, thanking him for his service and for reminding them of the values they held dear. One elderly man, a Korean War veteran named Earl, shook Logan's hand firmly. "What you did reminded me of the guys I served with," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Back then, we didn't have a choice but to stay strong, no matter the odds. Seeing you stand your ground like that, it was like seeing those old values brought back to life." Logan's actions had not only touched veterans but also inspired the younger generation. Among the crowd that day was a group of high school students who had come as part of a civic program. They listened with wide eyes as Logan spoke, their respect for him evident in their expressions. Afterward, a few of them gathered the courage to approach him. "Mr. Harris, we just wanted to say thank you," one of the students said, her voice full of admiration. "Hearing your story taught us a lot about respect and standing up for what's right." Logan smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment. "Thank you. Remember, strength isn't just about what you can do to others. It's about how you can carry yourself even when things are tough. Treat others with respect, even if they don't always show it to you. That's the real strength." The students nodded, and Logan knew that his message had resonated with them. It was a small moment, but it filled him with pride, knowing that the lessons he'd learned through service could make a difference in their lives. Meanwhile, back in Winslow, Logan's presence became a fixture in the community. Every time he visited the local diner, Stan greeted him with a fresh cup of coffee and a warm smile, eager to catch up on Logan's life. At the VFW post, Logan found himself surrounded by a group of veterans who now saw him as a leader and a role model. They shared their stories, bonded over their shared experiences, and found solace in each other's company. One morning, as Logan sat with his friends at the VFW, the group was joined by a local pastor, Reverend Parker. He had heard about the incident at the gas station and felt compelled to meet the man behind the story. "Logan, your story has inspired many of us," Reverend Parker said with a gentle smile. "It's a reminder that true strength comes from within. I'd like to invite you to speak at our Sunday service if you'd be willing." Though Logan hesitated at first, unsure about speaking at a church, he agreed, recognizing the opportunity to share his experiences and hopefully uplift others. That Sunday, he stood before the congregation, speaking from the heart about the power of resilience, compassion, and integrity. He shared how his faith and values had guided him through both combat and moments of prejudice, and how he believed in treating others with dignity, even when they didn't show the same. The congregation listened intently, moved by his words. Many nodded, their eyes filled with respect for Logan. Afterward, several approached him, thanking him for sharing his story and expressing how it had given them a renewed sense of purpose and strength. Among them was a middle-aged woman who confided in Logan that her son was preparing to enlist, and his story had given her comfort, knowing that people like him would be a positive influence. As the service concluded, Logan realized that his story had touched not only veterans and community members, but also families with loved ones in the military. His actions had served as a reminder of the values that the military instilled: discipline, respect, and resilience. And in sharing his story, he had helped bridge the gap between civilians and service members, fostering a deeper understanding of the sacrifices and challenges faced by those who serve. Back at the police station, Officer Reyes had been following Logan's story as it spread throughout the community. She took it upon herself to ensure that the gas station footage was added to the police academy's training curriculum, emphasizing Logan's restraint and professionalism. She hoped it would serve as a lesson to future officers, showing them that true strength wasn't in brute force, but in the ability to handle situations with control and respect. As for the three bikers, their court date arrived, and each of them faced the consequences of their actions. The judge, having reviewed the footage and witness statements, was unimpressed by their attempts to downplay the incident. Graybeard, who had led the confrontation, received the longest sentence due to his prior record, and Danny, whose parole had been violated, faced additional time behind bars. The bald biker, Tommy, received a reduced sentence, but was required to perform community service, hoping it would instill some measure of responsibility. In a surprising turn, Graybeard, whose real name was Jerry, requested to send a letter of apology to Logan. In his letter, he acknowledged his mistakes, admitting that he had been driven by anger and prejudice. He expressed regret for his actions and explained how his time in jail had given him a chance to reflect. "I was wrong to judge you," he wrote. "I've spent too many years hiding behind anger. But seeing the strength you showed that night, I realized that respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from dignity." Logan received the letter one quiet evening, and though he was under no obligation to respond, he found himself moved by the words. He saw it as a small step toward change, a glimmer of hope that even those hardened by years of prejudice could find a path toward understanding. In the end, Logan's actions became more than just a tale of self-defense. They became a lesson in forgiveness, resilience, and the power of integrity. For Winslow, his story served as a beacon of hope, a reminder that no matter the challenges, strength and dignity would always shine through. As Logan's story continued to resonate throughout Winslow and beyond, people from neighboring towns, and even from out of state, began reaching out to him, some sharing their own experiences of prejudice, and others simply wanting to thank him for his bravery and example. Logan received letters from veterans, civilians, and young people alike, all expressing gratitude for his strength and the positive message his actions had conveyed. One afternoon, as he sorted through the mail, Logan came across a handwritten letter from a woman named Margaret Collins, a 72-year-old retired schoolteacher from Tennessee. Her words touched him deeply. "Dear Mr. Harris," she wrote, "I saw the story about you on the news and I felt compelled to reach out. My husband, a black soldier, served in the Korean War, and I remember the challenges he faced, both abroad and back here at home. Seeing your story reminded me of him and of the strength he always carried with such dignity. Thank you for showing the world that real heroes don't just fight battles. They win hearts with respect and integrity. You've given an old woman like me renewed faith in our young people." Logan sat with the letter for a long time, moved by the thought that his story could reach someone who had experienced the same struggles in a different time. He decided to write back to Margaret, thanking her for her kind words and expressing his gratitude for her husband's service. They exchanged several letters over the following weeks, forming a friendship that spanned generations and shared values. The impact of Logan's actions reached even further, when a prominent magazine featured his story in a piece about unsung heroes. Titled, "A Soldier's Strength, The Day Integrity Stood Tall," the article recounted the events of the gas station incident, detailing how Logan's restraint had diffused the situation and prevented what could have been a violent altercation. The article highlighted how Logan, a black soldier, had faced down discrimination with grace, emphasizing the importance of resilience and respect in today's society. The piece struck a chord with readers across the country, and before long, Logan found himself receiving interview requests from news outlets and community organizations. Though he felt a bit out of his element in the spotlight, he understood the importance of sharing his experience and the positive message it carried. During one of his interviews, Logan was asked what had given him the strength to handle the bikers without resorting to violence. He paused thoughtfully before answering, his voice steady and calm. "I learned early on that real strength doesn't come from your fists or your rank," he said. "It comes from knowing who you are, standing up for what's right and treating others with respect, even when they don't offer the same. I wanted to show that you don't have to lose your dignity to defend yourself." The interviewer looked at him, visibly moved by his words. "Thank you, Sergeant Harris," she said, her tone sincere. "It's clear that your story has inspired many people, and it's a message we could all benefit from." As the interview aired, more people began to reach out to Logan, expressing their admiration and gratitude. He received messages from military families who felt pride in knowing their loved ones were serving alongside someone with his values. Many of them shared how his actions had given them hope and strength, especially during times when the world seemed divided. One evening, Logan's CO called again, informing him that the Army wanted to recognize him with a special commendation for his exemplary behavior. "Your actions haven't gone unnoticed, Harris," his CO said. "You represented the values we strive to instill in every service member, and it's time we honor that." The ceremony was held at Fort Huachuca, and Logan's family, including Claire and Noah, joined him, along with a crowd of his peers and community members who had come to show their support. As Logan stood in front of the gathered crowd receiving his commendation, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. His thoughts drifted back to the gas station, to the moment he had faced the bikers, and he realized that everything he had done had simply been a reflection of the values he'd carried with him his entire life. After the ceremony, Logan was approached by a young man named Jalen, a new recruit who had recently enlisted in the Army. "Sergeant Harris," Jalen began, his voice filled with respect. "Your story is the reason I decided to join. I want to be a soldier who stands for something just like you." Logan felt a swell of pride, patting the young man on the shoulder. "You'll do great things, Jalen. Just remember, strength isn't about how you fight, it's about what you stand for. Carry yourself with integrity and you'll be a credit to the uniform." Back in Winslow, Logan's story continued to ripple through the community. At the diner, Stan had become something of a local celebrity himself, recounting the tale to customers with pride. He often pulled up the gas station footage on his phone, sharing it with anyone who hadn't yet seen it, and each time he told the story, his admiration for Logan seemed to grow. He didn't just defend himself, Stan would say to anyone who would listen. He defended something bigger, something that all of us can believe in. And he did it without throwing a single punch. The story became a source of inspiration, especially for those who had faced discrimination or adversity themselves. Logan's actions became a symbol of resilience and dignity, reminding people that it was possible to rise above hatred and ignorance with strength and grace. One Saturday morning, as Logan was enjoying breakfast at the diner with his family, Stan approached their table with a wide smile. "Logan, I wanted you to know that I'm planning to host a Veterans Day event at the gas station this year. I think it's time we honor our service members in a way that really matters. I'd be honored if you'd be the guest speaker." Logan glanced at Claire, who gave him an encouraging nod, and then back at Stan. "I'd be honored, Stan. It sounds like a wonderful idea." As Veterans Day approached, the town began buzzing with excitement about the upcoming event. People from across the community came together, decorating the gas station with flags and banners, creating a festive atmosphere. The event was to be held outdoors, with chairs set up near the pumps where Logan's story had first unfolded. On the morning of the event, a large crowd gathered at Stan's gas station, including veterans, civilians, families, and friends who had come to pay their respects and to hear Logan speak. Stan, dressed in his old military jacket, took the stage first, his voice filled with pride as he welcomed everyone and introduced Logan. As Logan stepped up to the microphone, he took a moment to look out over the crowd, feeling a wave of gratitude for the support he had received from his community. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I am honored to stand before you, not because of what happened here, but because of what it represents." He spoke about the values that had guided him through life, the importance of respect, integrity, and courage. He shared how his experiences had taught him that true strength wasn't about physical power, but about standing up for what was right and treating others with dignity. His words resonated with the crowd, many of whom were moved to tears as they listened. "Today we honor all who have served," Logan continued, his gaze sweeping over the audience. "And we remember that no matter our differences, we share a common humanity. When we treat each other with respect, we build a community that stands strong, a community that rises above prejudice and hatred." The crowd erupted into applause, and Logan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had turned a moment of adversity into a message of unity, and seeing his words resonate with those around him filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. After the speech, people approached Logan to shake his hand, many of them expressing their gratitude and admiration. Among them was a local teacher, who shared that her students had been inspired by Logan's story, and had even started a project on respect and tolerance, inspired by his actions. The day was filled with moments of connection, laughter, and reflection, and by the time the event concluded, Logan felt more at home in his community than ever before. The gas station, once just a stop along the road, had become a symbol of resilience and unity for Winslow, a place where a single act of courage had brought people together. As Logan and his family made their way back to the car, Noah looked up at his father, his eyes shining with pride. "Dad, one day I want to be just like you." Logan smiled, his heart full. "You already are, buddy. You already are." As the months passed, Logan's story continued to resonate within Winslow and beyond. The Veterans Day event had brought the community together in ways few had imagined, creating a renewed sense of unity and pride in the small town. People felt a newfound respect not only for Logan, but for the values he had stood for: integrity, resilience, and the quiet strength to overcome adversity without losing one's dignity. One crisp winter morning, as Logan was helping Noah get ready for school, he received a call from a local high school counselor. The school had heard about Logan's story and was organizing a special assembly on overcoming prejudice, resilience, and the power of kindness. The counselor asked if Logan would be willing to speak to the students, many of whom were eager to meet the local hero they'd heard so much about. Logan agreed, touched by the invitation. He spent the following days preparing his speech, thinking carefully about the message he wanted to share. He knew that high school students face their own battles, pressures to fit in, to handle conflicts, and to find their place in the world. He wanted to leave them with a message that would inspire strength, compassion, and the courage to stand up for what was right. When the day of the assembly arrived, Logan found himself standing in front of hundreds of students in the school auditorium. The room buzzed with excitement as he approached the microphone, and he could feel the curious and admiring gazes of the young audience. "Good morning, everyone," Logan began, his voice steady and warm. "I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I know some of you may have heard about what happened at the gas station, but what I want to talk to you about today isn't just about that moment. It's about what we can learn from it and how we can all make a difference no matter where we are." He shared the story of the incident, recounting how he had faced down the bikers without violence, choosing instead to handle the situation with control and respect. He told them about the importance of standing up for oneself without losing one's dignity, and how true strength wasn't about intimidation, but about knowing who you are and treating others with kindness, even when it's not easy. The students listened intently, captivated by Logan's words. He could see their eyes widen as he spoke, some nodding along as they absorbed the message. "I know that life can sometimes feel like a struggle," he continued. "You might face people who try to bring you down, who judge you for things you can't control. But remember, you have a choice. You have the power to rise above, to show others what it means to be strong without being hurtful. You can choose to be a light in the world." As he wrapped up his speech, Logan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He hoped his words had planted a seed of resilience and compassion in the students, giving them a sense of empowerment in their own lives. After the assembly, several students approached him, eager to express their gratitude and admiration. One young girl, a freshman named Sarah, told him about a recent experience she'd had with bullying. "Hearing your story made me realize I don't have to be afraid," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for showing me that kindness can be strong too." Logan felt a swell of pride as he listened to Sarah, grateful that his experience could offer strength to someone else. He encouraged her, reminding her of her own worth and resilience, and left the school that day feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, the local newspaper ran a story about the assembly, and Logan's message began reaching an even wider audience. People across the state wrote letters to the editor, praising Logan's actions and the positive influence he had on the youth. The story was shared on social media, where it gained traction, spreading to communities far beyond Winslow. As Logan's story continued to inspire, he found himself invited to speak at events and gatherings in neighboring towns. Each time, he shared his message of resilience and dignity, emphasizing that kindness and respect were the true markers of strength. He met people from all walks of life, veterans, teachers, parents, and students, each one moved by his story and eager to express their gratitude. One evening, after a speaking engagement at a local church, Logan was approached by a man named Marcus. Marcus was a retired police officer who had recently begun working as a mentor for at-risk youth. "I want to thank you, Logan," Marcus said, shaking his hand firmly. "Your story is exactly what these young people need to hear. Too often they feel like they have to act tough to be respected, but you've shown them that real strength comes from within." Logan thanked Marcus, feeling a deep sense of humility. It was clear to him that his story had become something greater, a beacon of hope and inspiration for people facing their own struggles. Back in Winslow, life continued peacefully, but Logan's story remained a staple in the community's collective memory. At the gas station, Stan had hung a small framed newspaper clipping about Logan's actions, placing it behind the counter as a reminder of the lesson Logan had imparted. Customers often commented on it, and Stan would recount the story with pride, never growing tired of sharing the tale of the local hero who had stood up for what was right. One day, Logan stopped by the gas station to see Stan, who greeted him with a broad smile. "Logan, you'll be glad to know that your story is still inspiring folks," Stan said, patting the newspaper clipping. "You've left a mark on this town that won't be forgotten." Logan smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for the quiet, unassuming man who had stood by him that night. "Thank you, Stan," he replied. "I never imagined this story would go so far, but I'm grateful for every person it's touched." As the sun set over Winslow that evening, Logan took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened since that fateful night at the gas station. What had started as a moment of tension and adversity had transformed into something much greater. A story of hope, resilience, and the quiet strength to face prejudice with dignity. For Logan, life moved forward with purpose. He continued to speak at events, mentor young people, and spend time with his family, grateful for each day he could make a difference. He understood that his story had become more than just a personal experience. It had become a testament to the power of kindness, respect, and the strength to rise above. One evening as he sat with Claire and Noah watching the sunset over their backyard, Noah looked up at him, his eyes filled with wonder. "Dad, do you think I'll ever be able to help people like you do?" Logan smiled, wrapping an arm around his son's shoulders. "You already do, buddy. Just remember to be kind, be strong, and always stand up for what's right. That's all it takes." And in that moment, Logan felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that his legacy would live on, not only in the stories people shared but in the values he had passed on to the next generation. As Logan's story continued to inspire those around him, it wasn't long before an opportunity arose that would bring his message to an even wider audience. One morning he received an email from a producer of a popular documentary series that highlighted stories of resilience and heroism. The producer, Karen, explained that she had come across the story of Logan's gas station encounter and believed it would be a perfect fit for their next season. Logan was initially hesitant, unsure about stepping into the national spotlight, but after discussing it with Claire and considering the potential impact, he agreed, recognizing that his story could inspire even more people facing adversity. "If this can help others find their strength," he said to Claire, "then I think it's worth sharing." A month later, a small film crew arrived in Winslow, led by Karen, who had a warm, encouraging demeanor that put Logan at ease. She wanted to capture the essence of Logan's experience and the values that had guided him through the gas station encounter and beyond. Over the course of several days, they filmed interviews with Logan, his family, Stan, and even some of the townspeople who had witnessed the ripple effect of his actions. In one of the interviews, Karen asked Logan a question that cut to the heart of his story. "What is the message you hope people take away from your experience?" she inquired, her voice gentle but serious. Logan thought for a moment, choosing his words as carefully. "I hope people understand that strength isn't just about physical power. It's about resilience, about knowing who you are and standing up for what's right. We can all choose to be kind, even when others aren't. And that choice, I believe, has the power to change lives." As they wrapped up the final interview, Karen expressed her gratitude. "Thank you, Logan. Your story will resonate with so many. I think you've reminded people of something that's too often forgotten, that true heroes don't seek out conflict. They rise above it." After the crew left, Logan returned to his everyday life, patiently waiting for the documentary to be released. He felt a mix of excitement and nerves, wondering how people outside his small town would react to his story. But he also felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing he had shared something meaningful with the world. When the documentary episode finally aired, it became an instant hit. Viewers from across the country were moved by Logan's story, praising his courage and integrity. Social media buzzed with discussions as people shared clips and quotes from the episode, highlighting his message of respect and resilience. Some even reached out to him directly, expressing how his story had impacted their lives. One message in particular stood out. It was from a young black man named Darius, who lived in a large city and faced daily struggles with discrimination. "I've been through my share of tough times, Mr. Harris," Darius wrote. "Seeing you handle that situation with so much strength and grace reminded me that I don't have to let people's negativity get to me. You've shown me that I can be strong without losing myself. Thank you for that." Logan was touched, realizing that his story had reached people facing challenges he could relate to, but perhaps on an even larger scale. He wrote back to Darius, offering words of encouragement and reminding him of his own worth. "Remember, Darius, he wrote, it's not what others think of you that defines you. It's what you know in your heart. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and you'll be unstoppable. The documentary's popularity also caught the attention of various organizations, including a non-profit that worked with youth from underprivileged backgrounds. They reached out to Logan, asking if he would be interested in partnering with them as a mentor. Moved by their mission, Logan agreed, excited at the opportunity to give back and support young people who needed guidance and encouragement. Through this partnership, Logan began meeting with groups of young people, sharing his story, and teaching them about self-respect, resilience, and the importance of standing up for one's values. He found great joy in connecting with the kids, many of whom had faced significant hardships, but showed a remarkable strength and spirit. Logan felt a responsibility to nurture that resilience, to help them see their potential and believe in their worth. At one of these gatherings, a young girl named Maya approached him after his talk. She looked up at him with wide, earnest eyes and said, "Mr. Harris, do you think someone like me can make a difference? I want to be brave, like you." Logan crouched down to her level, meeting her gaze with a gentle smile. "Maya, you don't have to be like anyone else to make a difference. Just be yourself, kind, strong, and true to who you are. You have everything it takes to change the world, one kind act at a time." Maya's face lit up with hope, and Logan felt a deep sense of pride, knowing he had encouraged her to believe in her own power. Over time, he developed close bonds with many of the young people he mentored, becoming a source of strength and inspiration for them, just as others had been for him during his journey. Meanwhile, back in Winslow, Logan's story continued to inspire the community in subtle but lasting ways. At the local library, a group of residents organized a book club focusing on stories of resilience and courage, inspired by Logan's message. At the high school, students started a kindness club dedicated to promoting respect and empathy among their peers. Logan's influence had even reached the town's police department, where Officer Reyes and her colleagues began incorporating his story into their training sessions on community relations. They emphasized the importance of empathy, restraint, and understanding, hoping to bridge gaps and build a trust between officers and the residents they served. The gas station footage of Logan's encounter with the bikers became a powerful teaching tool, showing future officers the impact of handling challenging situations with calm and respect. As Logan's mentorship work grew, he became something of a local celebrity. People would often stop him in the grocery store or wave to him on the street, thanking him for his service and for the example he'd set. And though he felt humbled by the attention, he remained grounded, never forgetting the values that had guided him through his life. One evening, Logan received an invitation to a prestigious gala held in honor of military veterans who had made a significant impact on their communities. The event was set to take place in Washington, D.C., Cisrania, and would bring together veterans, community leaders, and supporters from across the nation. Claire encouraged him to attend, believing it would be an important opportunity to share his message on a larger stage. At the gala, Logan was introduced alongside other honorees who had made remarkable contributions to their communities. He shared the story of the gas station incident with the audience, speaking about the power of respect and the importance of resilience. He encouraged everyone to see the potential in themselves and in others, to build communities based on kindness and understanding. The crowd responded with a standing ovation, and Logan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. After the event, he was approached by numerous attendees who thanked him for his words and shared how his story had touched their lives. Among them was a young man named Andre, a veteran who had recently returned from deployment and was struggling to reintegrate into civilian life. "Sergeant Harris," Andre said, his voice filled with emotion, "hearing you speak tonight reminded me that I can still make a difference. I've been feeling lost since coming home, but you've shown me that there's a place for me here too." Logan placed a reassuring hand on Andre's shoulder, offering him a warm smile. "There's always a place for you, Andre. You've served your country, and now you can serve your community in new ways. Remember, the strength you carry within you is more powerful than any challenge you'll face." As Logan boarded the plane back to Winslow, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that his journey was far from over and that his story still had the power to uplift others, to spark change, and to remind people of the values that truly mattered. And though he had never sought fame or recognition, he embraced the responsibility that came with his newfound platform, grateful for each person he had touched along the way. In the end, Logan's story was more than just a tale of one man's courage. It was a reminder that in a world often filled with division and hardship, there was still a place for kindness, resilience, and respect. And as long as people chose to stand up for what was right, to lift each other up rather than tear each other down, there was hope for a brighter, more compassionate future. Returning home from the gala in Washington, D.C., Logan felt as though he'd reached a new chapter in his life. Winslow welcomed him back with open arms, and he resumed his work, both in the community and as a mentor to local youth. Yet something felt different, a sense of deeper purpose that kept him moving forward. His story continued to spread, reaching people in unexpected places. One evening, Logan received a call from the principal of a high school in Chicago. The principal, Ms. Brown, had been inspired by his documentary and wanted to invite him to speak at a special assembly for her students, many of whom faced difficult circumstances. She believed that Logan's message of resilience and self-respect could help them understand their own strength. Moved by the invitation, Logan agreed, and a week later, he found himself boarding a flight to Chicago. The school was located in a neighborhood that had its share of struggles, but as Logan walked through its halls, he saw the same hopeful faces, the same spirit of curiosity and resilience he had encountered back home. These were young people who faced challenges every day, and Logan wanted to show them that they could rise above their circumstances. The assembly was held in the school's gymnasium, with rows of students seated on bleachers, chatting and laughing as they waited. When Logan took the stage, the room fell silent, their attention fixed on him. He looked out over the crowd, taking a moment to gather his thoughts before beginning. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted them, his voice warm and steady. "Thank you for inviting me here today. I know life can feel like a fight sometimes, and I know many of you face challenges that most people don't see. But I want to remind you of something important. Every single one of you has the strength to stand up for what's right, to overcome the odds, and to become the person you want to be." He shared his story, the encounter at the gas station, the lessons he had learned in the military, and the values of respect and integrity that had guided him. As he spoke, he could see their expressions change, eyes widening as they took in his words, as though each one could see a part of themselves in his story. "I know that sometimes people will try to bring you down," Logan continued. "They may judge you or try to make you feel small. But remember, they don't define who you are. Only you can do that. Stand strong, treat others with kindness, and never forget your own worth." The students erupted into applause when he finished, and Logan felt a surge of pride, hoping his words had made an impact. Afterward, many of them came up to thank him, asking for advice and sharing their own stories. Among them was a young man named Malik, a sophomore who had recently lost his father and was struggling to stay focused in school. "Mr. Harris," Malik said, his voice wavering slightly, "I just want to say thank you. I've been feeling lost, like there's no point in trying. But hearing you speak, it made me realize I still have something to give. My dad always taught me to be strong, and I want to make him proud." Logan placed a reassuring hand on Malik's shoulder, offering him a gentle smile. "Your father would be proud of you, Malik. Keep going. Keep believing in yourself. You have so much to offer, and the world needs people like you." As Logan left the school that day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His story had resonated with people from all walks of life, and each encounter reminded him that the values he held close weren't just for himself. They were a beacon for others, seeking guidance and strength. Back in Winslow, Logan's work with the local youth continued to grow. He started a mentorship program with the help of Officer Reyes and other community leaders, reaching out to young people who needed support, encouragement, and a positive role model. Together, they held workshops on self-respect, conflict resolution, and the power of kindness, teaching the next generation how to navigate challenges with dignity. At one of these workshops, Logan invited Stan from the gas station to share his own story. The retired veteran spoke about his experiences in Vietnam, the struggles he faced upon returning home, and the lessons he had learned along the way. The young people listened in awe, moved by Stan's resilience and humbled by the sacrifices he had made. "I may not have all the answers," Stan said with a chuckle, glancing at Logan. "But I know this much. Life will throw you curveballs. It'll test you in ways you never expected. But if you stay true to yourself, if you hold on to what matters, you'll make it through. And one day, you'll look back and see just how far you've come." The room filled with applause, and Logan could see the respect and admiration in the eyes of the young people gathered there. He felt a deep gratitude for Stan, whose unwavering support had been a constant source of strength from the very beginning. As the mentorship program gained traction, other towns began reaching out, asking Logan to help establish similar programs in their communities. He found himself traveling to nearby cities, meeting with the local leaders, and sharing his blueprint for fostering resilience, respect, and community support. Each new program he helped establish felt like a small victory, a step toward building a better, kinder world. Through it all, Logan remained humble, focused on the values that had guided him from the start. He knew that the impact of his story went beyond him, that it was a reminder to everyone who heard it that kindness and resilience were universal strengths, qualities that could unite people from different backgrounds and bridge divides. One day, as Logan was preparing for another trip, he received a surprise visit from Officer Reyes, who had become a close friend and ally. She handed him a plaque engraved with the words, "In honor of integrity, strength, and service to community." Beneath it was a small inscription, "For showing us the way forward." "Logan, you've done more for this town than you'll ever know," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "This is just a small token of our appreciation. You've reminded us all of what truly matters." Logan accepted the plaque with gratitude, deeply moved by the gesture. He knew that he hadn't set out to become a hero or to receive recognition. All he had wanted was to stand up for what he believed in, to protect his family, and uphold the values he held dear. But seeing the impact of his actions on his community filled him with a profound sense of fulfillment. As he hung the plaque on the wall of his home, Logan thought back to the beginning, to the night at the gas station, when he had faced down the bikers without knowing how far-reaching the consequences of his actions would be. He realized that his journey was a testament to the power of one moment, one choice, to shape lives and inspire change. Claire watched as Logan adjusted the plaque, a soft smile on her face. "I'm proud of you, Logan," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "You've made such a difference, not just here, but for so many people." Logan hugged her tightly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the life they had built together. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied, his voice filled with love. "You and Noah have been my rock through it all." Later that evening, as Logan sat on the porch with Claire and Noah, watching the sunset over Winslow, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. His story had become more than a tale of bravery or resilience. It had become a reminder of the strength that lay within each person, the power to face adversity with dignity, and the impact that a single act of kindness could have on the world. For Logan, life would continue with purpose and humility. He would keep sharing his story, mentoring young people, and building connections with those around him. And as he looked out over his hometown, he felt certain that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had the strength to face them. Logan's journey had shown him that true heroes weren't defined by fame or accolades, but by the quiet, steadfast courage to do what was right. And as long as he held on to that truth, he knew he would be able to make a difference, one moment at a time. As Logan's journey continued, the lives he touched grew in number and impact. Winslow had become a town known for its values of resilience, unity, and respect, inspired by one man's quiet courage. Each year, on Veterans Day, the town gathered at Stan's gas station for an annual ceremony to honor veterans, sharing stories of service and sacrifice, and paying tribute to Logan's enduring legacy. This year's ceremony was especially meaningful. Logan was set to receive a Community Award, one recognizing his extraordinary contributions to Winslow and beyond. The crowd gathered at the gas station, the place where his story had first unfolded, creating a sense of reverence and nostalgia that filled the cool autumn air. People of all ages came to show their appreciation, including many of the young people Logan had mentored over the years, now grown and grateful for the role he had played in their lives. Stan, ever the proud friend and storyteller, opened the ceremony with a heartfelt speech. "This gas station," he began, gesturing to the place they all knew so well, "is more than a spot to fill up your tank or grab a coffee. It's where one man showed us the strength of character, the power of kindness, and the courage to stand tall in the face of adversity. Logan didn't just change this town, he changed all of us." The crowd erupted in applause as Logan stepped forward to accept the award. He stood at the microphone, humbled by the outpouring of support, his heart full of gratitude. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "Thank you all," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's hard for me to put into words what this means to me. I didn't set out to make a difference. I just tried to live by the values I learned in the military and from my family. Respect, kindness, and courage. But seeing how my story has inspired all of you reminds me that we all have the power to make an impact, no matter where we come from or what we face." He looked out over the crowd, his gaze lingering on the young faces watching him with admiration. "If there's one thing I want to leave you with," he continued, "it's this. Never underestimate the power of kindness. In a world that often feels divided, it's up to each of us to be a light, to show respect, and to stand up for what's right. Together we can create a community, a world, where everyone feels valued and accepted." As he concluded his speech, the crowd stood in a standing ovation, their applause echoing across the town square. Logan felt a swell of pride, not for himself, but for the community that had come together, embodying the very values he had strived to uphold. After the ceremony, Logan took time to speak with the attendees, sharing laughs, memories, and moments of connection. One by one, people approached him to express their gratitude, to thank him for inspiring them to be better and kinder. He saw the faces of those he had mentored, young adults who had once been shy teenagers, now confident and driven, eager to make a difference in their own ways. As the day drew to a close, Logan found himself standing beside Stan, watching as the crowd slowly dispersed. Stan looked up at him with a grin. "You know, Logan, I'm proud of you. You've built something special here, something that'll last." Logan smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "Thank you, Stan. I couldn't have done it without you in this town." In the years that followed, Logan's story continued to spread, becoming a part of the town's folklore. People shared it with newcomers, parents told it to their children, and each telling kept the spirit of his actions alive. Logan remained involved in the community, speaking at schools, mentoring young people, and helping other towns create programs inspired by Winslow's commitment to kindness and resilience. As we come to the end of Logan's journey, we're reminded that true strength isn't found in power or fame, but in the quiet courage to stand up for what's right. Logan showed us that resilience, kindness, and respect have the power to change lives and to bring communities together in ways we might never have imagined. For each of us, Logan's story is a call to action, to carry these values forward, to treat others with respect, and to stand strong in the face of adversity. Because, as Logan taught us, we all have the power to make a difference, to be a light in someone's life, and to create a world that reflects the very best in humanity. Thank you for following this story. Remember, every act of kindness matters, and every moment of courage can inspire those around us. As you go forward, carry Logan's message with you and let it remind you that, no matter the challenges, we each have the power to make our world a little brighter.